You have a framework for everything that has happened. The inconsistency was a soul contract. The emotional unavailability was a karmic lesson. The times he made you feel small, confused, or like your needs were too much, those were opportunities for growth, for clearing, for becoming the version of yourself who no longer needs what she needed before. You have been using spiritual language to make sense of experiences that, in any other context, you would simply call painful. And that reframing has been doing something you have not fully examined yet. It has been making the unacceptable feel meaningful. And meaning, when you are in enough pain, can become the most sophisticated form of tolerance there is. This video is about that, about the line between a genuinely transformative connection and a connection that is using the language of soul contracts to keep you in something that is not serving your growth. It is about the most important question on the twin flame path, not whether the contract is real, whether you are consenting to it clearly. The most confronting thing I will say today is this: the soul contract framework, as it is commonly taught, can make abuse invisible. Stay with me. Here is the belief that has been operating underneath the soul contract narrative. The belief is this: if something is spiritually significant, it is worth enduring. If the pain is producing growth, then the pain is justified. If it was agreed to at a soul level, then my present self does not get to object. That belief has a name in psychology. It is called post-hoc rationalization. The mind generates a justification for an experience after the fact. Not before, not during, after. And the sophistication of the justification is often proportional to the amount of pain that needs to be made bearable. The soul contract framework is not inherently harmful, but it becomes harmful the moment it is used to override the present moment consent of the person inside the experience. And your present nervous system is the only authority that actually matters when it comes to what you will and will not accept. Carl Jung spent decades mapping what he called the shadow. The shadow is the collection of everything the psyche has learned to hide, not because it is bad, because at some point it was not safe to acknowledge. Jung observed that the most dangerous shadow content is not the darkness we project onto others. It is the needs and limits we have learned to render invisible to ourselves. For many people on the twin flame path, the shadow contains something very specific. It contains the belief that their needs are too much, that asking for consistency is spiritual immaturity, that requiring basic relational safety is a failure of unconditional love, that genuine discomfort with how they are being treated is ego rather than wisdom. When that shadow content is active, the soul contract framework becomes a vehicle for it. Every boundary that could be set becomes a lesson to surrender. Every moment of genuine harm becomes a clearing, and the person endures not because the contract requires it, but because their shadow has decided that their own comfort does not count. I want to tell you about a woman named Sun. She was 38, a social worker, someone who spent her professional life recognizing the signs of harm in other people's situations with extraordinary clarity. She had been in a connection for 2 years that she described as the most spiritually significant relationship of her life. She came to this work not because she thought something was wrong. She came because she was tired in a way she could not explain, a tiredness that sleep did not touch. The moment of shift came when a colleague described a client's relationship. The colleague listed the behaviors that concerned her, the emotional unpredictability, the withdrawal after intimacy, the way the client reorganized her own needs around the other person's moods, the way she explained away each incident with a narrative about growth. Seun sat very still. She recognized every behavior her colleague named, not in her client, in herself. She drove home that evening, and for the first time, she asked a question she had been carefully avoiding. Not is this a soul contract, but is this okay with me? The first sign is called the consent disappearance. You agreed to this connection at some level you cannot consciously access. That agreement is being used to override your present moment experience. Genuine growth requires your ongoing conscious consent. Not a pre-incarnational contract your current self cannot verify. The second sign is called harm reframed as curriculum. When something genuinely hurts you, the first move is to find the lesson, rather than to assess the harm. This is not spiritual maturity. This is a nervous system that has learned to bypass its own protective signals. Your discomfort is data. It is not a test of your faith. The third sign is called the asymmetrical growth narrative. The soul contract is always asking something of you: patience, acceptance, surrender, unconditional love. It is rarely, if ever, asking something equivalent of the divine masculine. Growth that only flows in one direction is not a soul contract. It is an unequal dynamic wrapped in spiritual language. The fourth sign is called the boundary dissolution framework. Every limit you try to set is reframed as a vibration you need to clear. Every time you say, "This is not acceptable," something in the framework redirects you toward examining your own resistance rather than the behavior that prompted it. Sovereignty requires the capacity to say no. Any framework that systematically dismantles that capacity is not serving your highest good. The fifth sign is called the exhaustion that does not lift. You are tired in a way that spiritual practice does not touch. This tiredness is your nervous system communicating something it has not been allowed to say directly. It is the accumulated cost of repeatedly overriding your own protective responses in service of a narrative about growth. I want to give you something right now. This is called the consent check. Place both feet flat on the floor and take one slow breath. Now, bring to mind one specific behavior in this connection that you have explained away using spiritual language. Just one. Hold it in your mind without the explanation, without the soul contract narrative, without the growth framework, just the behavior itself. Now ask your body one question. If a person I loved described this behavior happening to them, what would I feel? Whatever arises in your body in the next 30 seconds is your nervous system speaking without the filter of the framework. That response is information. It belongs to you. Soul contracts may be real. The question was never whether the contract exists. The question is whether the version of you alive in this body right now is being asked to grow or being asked to disappear. Genuine sacred connection does not require you to render your own limits invisible. It does not ask you to endure what your nervous system recognizes as harm in exchange for spiritual significance. The most sovereign act on the twin flame path is not unconditional love toward another person. It is unconditional honesty toward yourself. Drop a comment below and tell me one specific behavior you have been explaining away with the soul contract framework. Name the behavior, not the explanation. The behavior. That act of naming is the beginning of integration. If this kind of honest and grounded perspective is what you have been missing, subscribe to Divine Flame Union, because this is the depth we bring every single week.